Hi everyone, this is Dave Hagblad. I started out making a tutorial to show a couple of options for using form to email functionality on a website. For instance, making it so a visitor could easily contact a real estate agent for a property they were interested in. So I'll show you this in a second, but what I discovered is that Business Catalyst has deprecated one of the techniques I was going to show you. So if you have any websites using the first technique, like this real estate template, you need to update them to what I'm going to show you now. Let me show you what I mean. So if I go to a property listing and scroll to the bottom, you see that this email address is here, and there's a form here. And if I put my name and my email address and a message there and hit submit, or at least until I tried it today, it would send an email to kirstensmith@gmail.com with my information saying, hey, I'm interested in this property. That technique is no longer working. Let me show you what that looks like if I get up to the action. This is a technique we were using, default.aspx $A equals form and %email equals Kirsten_Smith. And that's inserted just with some liquid logic. Anyway, that's what I was doing, and that is no longer working. So let me show you the updated technique. Comment out this section. The comments are on this section. So this, again, this is that what I was using there. There's default ASPX. I put some spaces in there so you can read it. Form equals item.email ID, which is basically up here. I do a module web app call. I throw it in a collection called my web app. And I'm looking for a specific agent, which is the contact agent ID. And then I even have a better technique. You don't have to have a for loop here. You can just use a different technique, which I'll show you. But I was dropping item.email ID in there. That's how I was getting it before. So in the new one, I'm using my web app, which is the name of the collection, .items0.name. And that's because I know there's only one item in there because I've used a specific contact ID. So you don't even have to have a for loop. So even that is a bit easier. This now action is just the web forms action URL. I did add page ID equals thank you, just because the other one took you to a thank you page. So does this one. I have a couple of hidden fields. And in there, I'm putting full name and email address. And what I'm dropping in there are the name and email address of the agent. And because we're going to use an autoresponder, which I'll show you in a sec, to send the email out, that's why we need to do that. And then I have some custom fields to capture the name and the email address of the person who's looking at the property. And then I've used some liquid here to build up some information about the property from the page that they are actually looking at. So if I save that, it should upload. Do a refresh. So now I'm looking at this page and I have on this particular agent, if you look at this web app, our agents, that email ID is what I'm picking up and dropping into this area here. And that's also what I'm putting in these two hidden fields. Let's see if I cannot unhide. If I just change those to text. So you can see that I've inserted John Doe and Dave H at formtest.xyz, which is his name, and then I've faked up that email address. I got something wrong with the comment there, sorry. Get rid of that. All right, so I have this agent's name and his email address on the form, and then I have some custom fields for my name and my email address. Let me show you what that looks like. So on the web form, you have first name, last name, and email address. Those are standard. But because we're going to use the autoresponder, the email address that we want to go in here is the email address of the person we want to send the email to. So then you have customer name, customer email, and property info. So let me just show you what that looks like, so maybe it'll make more sense. So if I go here and say Dave test, and it doesn't really matter here, but I'll put in test message, and I press submit, I'm taken to the thank you page. Thank you for contacting us. Our property agent will contact you shortly. And here's the email that came out. So, hey John Doe, Dave Test at this email address was looking at this property on a website and would like more information. Property I was viewing, here's the address, and even the system ID. So, and system ID is just the web app ID, so it might be a little easier to find if they're in the back end. So how did that happen? Well, in the autoresponder email, I'm just using a liquid technique. I have module underscore webform results, template equals to suppress the template, throwing it in a collection called submission. Tag recipient name is just the person's email address. In this case, it's John Doe. And then I say submission.results.customer name. So I have the collection of submission.results, which is the sub-collection. Customer name at this customer email was looking at this property on our website and would like more information. So it's pretty straightforward. Make sure your format is HTML. It just looks better. And this technique is detailed very nicely here under a tutorial that Scott Reynolds did for BC Gurus called Using Custom Web Form Results. And I will make sure there's a link to that. But it's if you just search for Custom Web Form Results, you'll get this whole tutorial. And this particular one, this technique is covered quite well in the third video here, although you should probably watch it all. So what happens is John Doe goes in the full name. The email address from the web app goes in this email, and then the customer name, customer email, and the property info goes out on that. And I get this really nicely formatted email. And you could put logos and all kinds of things in the email template that this uses to send out. Now there is a couple of downsides. One of which is that the person who submitted the email, in this case it was me, is not entered into the CRM. That's a bit unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. If you wanted that, if that was critical for your spec, you could have a second web form that's hidden here that gets AJAX submitted, and we've covered that in both BC Gurus and on BC Academy. So that's a possibility if that was critical for you. But what I do like about this is when I go to the dashboard and I look at, you see I've been doing some testing here, but when I go to John Doe, which is in this case me, and I go to cases, you can see all those previous entries are there. And if I go and look at them, I have that customer name, customer email, and property info. So it is nicely contained that way. The only downside is that this email address does not get into the CRM. So I think this is a pretty decent solution. I think adding this bit of information is probably a good upgrade for this particular template. It's probably makes it much more usable, though it does take up a little bit more room. I guess you could, in theory, rather than making this read-only, you could just hide it, and it would still submit. It would still be there. But I like it because it's kind of confirmation for the person submitting their email that they're going to talk to someone about that property. And this is the code. No real rocket science here. Just a couple of hidden input fields. I'm using my web app.item 0 to get the name and the email address. And then it's just the custom fields, the standard output. This text area uses a bit of liquid and the read-only attribute here to build up this line. You could, of course, make that say whatever you wanted it to do. This little snippet here is just a carriage return line feed, which makes system ID show up on its own line. Outside of that, I've commented out the validation on the email address because we are inserting it here programmatically. I did comment out the validation on the text area, the message area. If you want to make that required, just go ahead and uncomment it here, and that would be just fine. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Feel free to add a note about how you may have used this technique in your projects. And of course, questions and feedback are always welcome. And I will say, if you have sites that are based on this real estate template, or you just want to investigate it more, I have updated the master versions of this template so that you can just re-request it. Go to the template detail page. If you've already purchased it, you can just ask for it again. It doesn't cost you a credit. Or if you're just interested in that technique and you don't have this template, we'll go ahead and use one of your credits to get it. And we'll talk to you next time.